All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this monthly webinar with Congresswoman Claudia Tenney's office. I am joined here today with the FEMA, Alvin Matthew, who is forgive me if I get this incorrect, but I believe you're a program manager with FEMA there, Alvin, who is going to go over the upcoming and currently out um, FEMA Assistance for Firefighters Grant, commonly known as the FEMA AFG program. Alvin is going to go over several different topics with this, and he's going to give an overview and just a couple house cleaning items. This is going to be recorded. This will be posted to the Congresswoman's official website at a later date so that anybody can go in and take a look at the information provided later, and then anybody that wasn't able to make it onto this webinar is able to get on. So with that being said, thank you very much, Alvin, for being here, and I will turn it over to you. Oh, and
All
just,
right. You see my screen?
yep, have your screen and you are unmuted, so perfect.
All right. Thank you, Michael. And thank you for the introductions. But I'd also like to thank Representative Tenney for setting this webinar up today. So thank you. But most importantly, I would like to thank all our first responders that are on the call today, um, that joined us today. You are the backbone of the emergency response world. You are one of the you are the ones that are there before, during, and after a disaster. You sacrifice your lives, your times with your families and loved ones to basically protect all of us, our communities. So we are all indebted to you for your service. So thank you for all that you do. AFG is probably the best grant that FEMA administers directly to our first responders, our fire and EMS folks. We have a saying here in AFG, response works best when it's locally executed. So for FEMA to come out and provide this funding, it bolsters resiliency within our communities. AFG's goal is to not only help our first responders, but to make our local communities become more capable. All right. And that being said, again, welcome everyone to the Assistance to Firefighter Grants Program Application Development Workshop. All right. And I'm guessing for some of us, or for some of the folks that are with us today on this call, you got your seasoned AFG veterans that joined us on previous webinars. You're going to see some of the slides in the presentation are things you've already seen. So forgive me if some of this is repetitive, but I would really like to hit hard on and highlight some of the most important information for for the FY24 application. So when you do apply, you will have the proper tool to help guide you through the process. On the screen, as you see, the FY24 application period opened yesterday, November 12th at 8 a.m. And it's going to, the deadline and the end date is on December 20th at 5 p.m. All right. So the first thing I want you to know is that help is always available to you, again, throughout the entire process. Um, as you can see, you have a lot of resources to choose from, right? The first resource is myself. I'm the Regional Fire Program Specialist in Region 2, and there is at least one in each of the 10 different FEMA regions. Region 2, that's us, is comprised of New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. The next option is the AFG Help Desk. The Help Desk is super useful. It is staffed daily by fire service professionals that know the program really well. And the last bullet contains a link to our AFG program website where you could download other helpful user guides. There are plenty of resources out there on the AFG program website to help you develop your application. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, help is always available, right? Aside from myself, you have these three important numbers you will need to know. All right, the first one is FEMA Go. If you do not have a FEMA Go account, you cannot submit an AFG application. The application itself is located within FEMA Go. So you want to log into go.fema.gov and create an account. that is where you will submit your AFG application. And the one thing that they don't allow me to do is they don't allow me to go in, unlock accounts, create accounts, update passwords, retrieve passwords. You're going to have to call that technical hotline number you see on the screen, the 1-877-585-3242, so to help them for them to help you unlock your account and other technical issues. Second number, SAM. This is really important. SAM.gov. Make sure you stay on top of your SAM.gov account. And the account expires every year. If it's been a while since you logged in, you gotta log in and take a look at your account. If you forgot your if you got your username and password, call that number on the screen, the 1-866-606-8220, to have them open and updated or unlocked. But it's important that you do not want to have your account expired, especially right before the applications start. If you let it expire, it can take anywhere between 3 to 5 weeks, sometimes even more, to renew your account. So, FEMA and Representative Tenney wants to get your money into your account, but we cannot do that if your SAM account is not active. So please make sure your SAM is up to date, stay up to date with it. And finally, last but not least, again, as I mentioned in the previous slide, is the AFG help desk. Again, this number or this help desk is staffed daily by fire service professionals. If for some reason that you cannot get in contact with me or you need an answer right away, call that number on the screen, the 1-866-274-0960, and someone will help you. All right, so for today's program, I'm going to provide an overview of AFG, give a brief discussion on the award process, developing the application, and most importantly, developing your narratives. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks to help you successfully pass the scoring levels, which is really important as soon as you pass the computer pre-score stage. For some of the newer folks who've never applied to this program before or have never gotten an award from AFG, I think it's important to understand the process of AFG. All right, I'm going to really hit hard on the narratives. You're going to get tired and probably get annoyed at me for constantly saying NOFO, notice of funding, high priority, medium priority, low priority, because it's really that important. All right, so I think it's important for everyone here on this call to know who is eligible for the AFG grant, who can apply, right? And who you will be competing against. And this also goes for SAFER and FP&S grants as well. So fire departments and fire districts, whether you're full-time paid, volunteer, or combination, if you report to NIFRS or I guess sometime in the future, nearest, you're eligible to apply for AFG grants. Non-affiliated EMS organizations are eligible for this award as well. If you provide medical transport, like an ambulance corps or a rescue squad, or you're an EMT, paramedic, and you are not, most importantly, not affiliated with a hospital, fire department, or university, you can apply. If you are a public or nonprofit 501c3 or 501c4, you can also apply. I'm assuming on this call, no one is here from a state fire training academy, but if there is someone here from a state fire training academy, you can apply as well. You will have a different application compared to everyone else. All right. So there are 3 different firefighter grant program related programs you see on the screen, and how much money is available, and which program gets what. All right, this slide shows you what you're competing for, what's on the table, and essentially what's up for grabs. And later on, I'm going to break down who gets what. So for the FY24 application, the AFG pot is about $291,600,000 available nationwide. For FY24 SAFER and FP&S programs, we do not have the funds, or we do not have the total dollar amounts yet. The applications have not been announced, but once I get the updates for the applications, I will send that over to Mike. All right. So all that money that I just spoke about earlier, right? This diagram, this little blue lifesaver shows what is broken down, how that is spread out, and who's getting what. All right. So it's really important for you to know that career, combination, and volunteer fire departments, they all get an equal share of no less than 25% of all that money I spoke about earlier for AFG. I emphasize no less because that number can jump up through open competition. Again, 25% goes to career departments, 25% goes to combination departments, and 25% goes to volunteer departments. That is 75% of that funding spread evenly between volunteer, combination, and career departments. All right, and then we break it down a little further. You have your state fire training academies, again, like I mentioned earlier, that only compete with each other, only get 3% of all that money. FP&S makes up 10% of that award, and then non-affiliated EMS agencies will get no less than 2%. Lastly is open competition, and this makes up 10% of that money. This means that 10% will be spread out based on the best application, regardless of where they came from, and then we will add it on top of the 25% that's already there. So that 25% for volunteer, that 25% for career, and the 25% for volunteer kind of departments can go up in percentage points based on open competition. All right, so you need to understand if you get an AFG award, you're on the hook for a local share or a non-federal share, and it's percentage, and it's based on percentage. And it's also based on population size, so it can vary between departments. So this means, give you an example, if your population is 20,000 or less, FEMA will pay 95% of that bill, and you will have to come out of pocket 5%. If the population is between 20,000 and a million, that percentage increases to 10% out of pocket. And you have those big metropolis cities, the New York cities or LA counties, wherever, the population, where the population is more than a million, the percentage out of pocket is 15%. So just a quick note about the criteria development panel. I'm going to talk a lot today about priorities, medium priority, low priority, high priorities. It's very important for you to know that FEMA does not determine any priorities of a firefighter or EMT. Though that goes along the lines of the criteria development panel that determines those priorities, and it's made up of the 9 major fire service organizations you see on the screen over here. These organizations are made up of first responders like yourselves. They will determine what are the high, medium, and low priorities, and then we will take those priorities as recommendations. If you have any questions from this with the CDP, or you would like to be part of that panel, I would strongly recommend that or encourage you to reach out to your affiliate programs on this list. All right, so in this section, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the award process. Just like any grant that FEMA administers, AFG has a life cycle. The notice of funding opportunity, or the NOFO, is the first step in the grant's life cycle process. The NOFO is a very important document that outlines the priorities of the AFG award. And it's super important that everybody on this call opens the NOFO, reads it from the first page to the last page. There's so much information on the NOFO that is really useful to know. And the NOFA identifies the next step. It identifies when the application period starts and when it ends. All right, as I mentioned earlier, the 2024 application opened yesterday on November 12th, and it's going to end on December 20th. So once you submit the application, we go on to the next stage. And this stage is called the electronic scoring stage, where a computer will screen all applications, and based on an algorithm, it will compare various criteria. A lot of these questions are weighted, and they have a point value. So what you select in the drop-down menu in the application will accumulate points, right? And the more points you get, the higher your electronic pre-score will be. If you score high enough in the pre-score, you then advance to the peer review panel stage. If you do not score high enough here, this is where your application will be eliminated in the process. It will never make it to the peer review panels and then technical reviews, and you will not get the award. The most important point here is to really, really focus on the high priority items marked in the NOFO. And I'm going to go over these high priority items in the next few slides. I mentioned earlier, you're going to get tired of me constantly repeating NOFO high priority, NOFO high priority, because it's that important. And I want to stress that high priority items will score you the most amount of points. The high priority items puts you in control. Um, there are other items you cannot control, such as age of equipment or call volume, and that's all weighted as well, and it has its own set of points. For example, if you're trying to replace your bunker gear, um, you have your Morning Prides or your Globe Extremes or your Lions gears, right? You will get a very if they're about 7 or 8 years old, you will get a very low electronic prescore. You will probably not make it to the peer review panels. These are some of the items you cannot control, and I want you to know about it, especially when determining what to ask, and what you ask should already be pretty old. Again, the older the item, the more points it can get. So once you make it to the peer review panel stage, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a panel of your peers. The panel is made up of a bunch of first responders. It's a bunch of firefighters and some EMS folks. The application you put together will go to a conference room, and this panel will be read over by these panelists. By the end of it, they will either recommend you to FEMA or not recommend you to FEMA. If they do recommend you to FEMA, you proceed to the next stage, which is a technical review stage. In the technical review stage, the only thing that FEMA does in this stage is to determine if you are an eligible candidate. We are not going to evaluate you for points. We just want to know you are who you say you are, and that the information that you provided matches the information that is available to us. Let me give you an example. You put in for a new apparatus, right? And you say that your current engine or ladder is about 35, 40 years old. In the application, we will ask you for the VIN number. We will search the VIN number to make sure the apparatus is 35 years old and not 15 to 20 years old. That is what we do on the technical review side. So once we go past the technical reviews, we send it out to awards, which usually takes about 12 to 15 weeks. A little bit might go a little further than that, but generally it's around 12 to 15 weeks. And after that, we go right back to the beginning, and we start with a NOFO and start again. All right, the NOFO. I gave you a little overview of the NOFO earlier. Again, I cannot stress how important it is to comb through the NOFO document and understand what is being asked of. In the application, if you put anything with a red H, a high priority item, you will get the highest amount of points for what you asked for. If you put in for anything with the blue M, the medium, or low, the gray L, the application will be dead in the computer prescore process. All right, so just to remind you, FEMA Go is where the application will be submitted, and it will be located on FEMA Go as well. All right, so I'm not going to go into too much details with FEMA Go. For me, the best way to navigate FEMA Go is just to log in. So I'm just going to give you a little basics on FEMA Go. So right here is the screenshot of the login. And if you're unfamiliar with the screenshot, you need to get start cracking because you only have a few weeks left. All right. If you need help navigating through FEMA Go, I can send over some useful user guides. I'll send over like a big packet over to Michael, and he'll send that over to everybody else. If you are familiar with the screen, that's awesome. This is the first thing you will see when you log in. And if you see that little red circle right there, you click on that, and that is where you will start your application. All right, so I'm going to talk about the process of applying. And this begins with figuring out what it is you're going to ask for and to start preparing and developing your application. You do it now before the deadline. Right. So now you know what you need to apply, right? You need to have your FEMA Go account, your SAM.gov squared away, uh, all that fun stuff. And so let's talk about how to plan and prepare. And this does not only apply to AFG, but also applies to SAFER as well, especially when you're getting to your narratives. So you want to make the application as attractive as possible to the peer review panel. And one of the most important parts of this phase is to really determine what it is you're going to ask for. And before you start the application, I want you to conduct a risk assessment. And this is going to go a long way. As a matter of fact, we're going to ask you in the application itself that if you did a risk assessment, and you need to put that on there. Just my suggestion or my high recommendation. If you put a risk assessment, it's going to make your application that much more attractive. So at the end of the risk assessment, you'll want to develop a list of items that you need and prioritize those items. All right. So you want to just walk around your department, look at your inventory, just make a list of the oldest stuff you got, the oldest gear you have, the oldest SCBA you have, turnout gear, rescue rope, extrication tools, stuff that's eating away at your budget, that's broken or inoperable. Make sure you put that as a priority. Then you open up the NOFO and compare your list of priorities to the priorities of the NOFO. All right, so make sure you focus on the items in the NOFO that have the red H, the high priority item. So what this means, let's say your priority is a washer and dryer, SCBA, and ballistic PPE, and you put in for a washer and dryer, SCBA, and ballistic PPE, right? That washer and dryer and SCBA are high priority items, but the ballistic PPE is in blue M or the medium priority. Unfortunately, since that item is not a high priority item, your application will not proceed into the next stage. It's going to die out at the peer pre-score stage. All right. I just want to reiterate, you put anything on the application that has a blue M or gray L, I'm sorry, we will see you next year. I cannot stress enough that double check and check the NOFO. If it's not in the NOFO, then forget about it. AFG is meant to give you basic firefighting and EMS equipment, none of that cutting edge or latest technology stuff. I've in the last for FY23, I've seen a lot of departments fail at computer prescore because they did not put high priority items and they had strong applications. So when you're preparing your application, you want to make a list of your critical infrastructure within your jurisdiction. You do it now, right? Because when you log in to start the application, you already got it. So we're at the beginning stages of the application period. Make sure you get that in right away. And you're going to be asked about this in the application. So what are we talking about with critical infrastructure? We're talking about schools, universities, hospitals, power plants, roads, bridges, tunnels, anything that is considered a hazardous environment during a disaster. Um, please add that in there. You know, FEMA is in the disaster world. If there's a disaster, you need to ask yourself, what critical infrastructure am I protecting that is considered a hazardous environment? If there's a hurricane, what critical infrastructure would get impacted the most? That's what FEMA wants to know. So you put in the critical infrastructure your department protects, it will make your application more attractive. Also, if you provide mutual aid to other jurisdictions that have schools, universities, et cetera, put that in there as well. All right. So you're going to need to know your call volume, right? And this goes out to all fire departments. For your non-affiliated EMS agencies, we do not require it. So we will be looking for call volume numbers from the last 3 years. So look for 2024, 2023, and 2022 numbers. So yeah, just go on NIFRS and then put in those numbers from the last 3 years. Grant writer fees. You are absolutely allowed to hire a grant writer. We will reimburse grant writer fees for up to $1,500 if you get awarded. If you hire a grant writer and you pay the grant writer, but you do not get the award, we will not reimburse you for the grant writer. We will only reimburse your grant writer fee if you put it in the application and you get awarded. So make sure when you get a higher grant writer, you put it in the application. All right, so I think this is super important. Community classifications. Whether you're urban, suburban, or you're rural, you will be asked this question in the application, and you need to have it and you need to have an answer. All right, so this plays an important role in determining the swim lane you will be competing during the electronic pre-score stage that I mentioned earlier on. All right, so you need to get together with your department and figure out what your community classifications are or you fall under. All right, so there are 4 criteria that you need to keep an eye on when you're figuring this out. Your population, hydrant coverage, land use, which is zoning for agriculture or commercial or industrial, and the number of stations per square mile. All right, so if your jurisdiction falls within all of these criterias and you're unsure how to classify them, we strongly recommend you use population as a tiebreaker. And this is all located within the NOFO. So please take a look at the NOFO under community classifications. All right, so there are 3 different types of AFG applications you can submit or you should be submitting, and it doesn't hurt to submit all 3. You have your ops and safety application, your vehicle application, and a regional application. So it's also very important to know that a micro grant is an ops and safety application. And for FY24, and I think it started for FY23, the micro grant threshold went up to $75,000. So if your ops and safety application is $75,000 or less, you can't submit it as a micro grant. It will score you more points. If it is more than $75,000, you are not eligible for a micro grant. For non-affiliated EMS agencies, you're also allowed to submit all 3 applications. And state fire training academies can request many of the same things. However, again, like I mentioned earlier, they have their own separate application. You will not be competing against any state fire training academy. All right, so I'm going to start off with talking about ops and safety application. So within the ops and safety application, there are 5 line items you can put in facilities category, wellness and fitness category, and training category. Each one of these items move separately during the scoring process, and you can ask for as many of these line items. But that's if you have time to develop your application. If you do not have the time, if you do have the time, then by all means do so, put it in. All right. But if you don't, my advice, try to put in and focus on the highest risk items in your inventory, because you will apply for all of these items in the same application. However, each item will require its own narrative. And I'd rather you not get bogged down on 10 different line items and 10 different narratives. Just focus on the items you really need the most. Hey, Michael, I just want to do a mic check. I just got a pop-up saying the internet connectivity is unstable. Can you hear
Hey,
me?
yeah, there was a very brief blip on there, but you
Okay.
are good to go. Yeah, there was like a half second cut
Okay.
off, but I hear you loud and clear.
Great. Thank you, sir. Okay. All right. So I took a screenshot of the equipment priorities in the FY24 NOFO. Uh, so you notice the red H for a nozzle, which identifies as a high priority item, and the blue M, like the fit tester, which is a medium priority. Again, I mentioned earlier, I said it before, I'll say it again. You choose any item that is marked as a blue M, your application will be eliminated. It's really tempting to choose the blue M's or the gray L's, but please stay away from that. And just a heads up, and this was updated for FY23, and it's still active for FY24. If you see the first line item, if you see the air compressor cascade systems that systems have dropped in priority for individual applications, it dropped from a high priority to a medium priority. Um, However, if you went in on a regional application, it is still considered a high priority item for a regional application. All right, so I just wanted to dive a little bit more deeper with equipment. All right, you see on the screen that where it says basic equipment. High priority is given to basic equipment, which is simply the equipment that you carry on your fire truck every day. Nothing fancy or high tech. Again, please, please read the NOFO and take a look at all the priorities. All right, so take a look at RIT packs. You see it listed under equipment. If you request a RIT pack alone, it is considered an equipment and that is fine to put in. However, if you request a RIT pack along with an SCBA, it will get rejected. SCBA is a PPE request. If you need a RIT pack with an SCBA, you need to add the RIT pack as an additional funding item within the PPE activity for the SCBA. All right. So make sure you are determining what you're going to ask for, that you can explain how receiving these items is going to have a direct effect on firefighter health and safety. All right, so first responder health and safety is always a concern for us at FEMA, and it's always a high priority for us. In the narratives, we want to know that that the funding we're providing will benefit your health and safety. That's right. So please add that in the narratives. Age is also an important part of the scoring process. The older is always better when you're considering what to ask for. Also, when you're putting in for the age, put the date of the manufacturer, not the date when you purchased the item. You want to make sure and articulate that the equipment that you're purchasing will benefit other organizations, such as your mutual aid partners and other communities. So after you identify what items you need, you will be asked a follow-up question regarding its purpose, right? The answer to the follow-up purpose question will make or break your application. All right, this means when you choose the item that you're requesting, you will be asked the purpose for why you're requesting the item. So my advice here, high priority items that you're requesting has to coincide with the high priority purpose answers you see on the screen. For example, if you are requesting equipment that you do not currently own or damaged beyond repair, you should use that first high priority bullet point, which is to obtain equipment needed but not currently owned or replace equipment that is broken and or damaged beyond repair to achieve minimum operational and deployment standards for existing missions. If you are requesting to replace the equipment that is just no longer compliant, you want to use the second high priority answer, which is to replace non-compliant equipment to current standards. And you see those last two bullet points, blue M and gray L. Again, you choose those options. You will not pass computer pre-score. You got to remember, always, always, always aim for the red H in the high priority answers. All right, so a good rule of thumb for PPE, older the better, right? And this means when you're conducting that risk assessment I mentioned earlier, you want to seek out the PPE that is at minimum 10 years old or older. For SCBA, it must also be 10 years old or older, but also be 2 cycles out of compliance with the NFPA 1981. All right, in order to be competitive, remember it's gotta be old or older than 10 years old for PPE. All right, so here's another screenshot of the NOFO. This time I took a screenshot of the PPE. So take a look at all the high priority items we have on the screen. And then this is just one page. There are other pages in the NOFO that give you the priorities. All right, so take a look at your boots, gloves, uh, pass devices, goggles. Now, they're all high priority items that's marked in the red H. Now, take a look at the blue M's, what I mentioned earlier, um, your ballistic PPE, you got your chem suits, wet and dry suits. Um, Again, you choose anything with that blue M, your application will be eliminated. So earlier in the last few slides, I discussed the do's and don'ts for the equipment purpose questions. Now I'm going to discuss it for the PPE purpose questions. All right, and this is important because some of you have bunker gear that's getting close to that 10-year mark. If you're requesting turnout gear for firefighters that do not have it, or if you have riding positions on your apparatus that do not have SCBA assigned to them, you want to use that first high priority answer, which is to increase supply for new hires or existing firefighters that do not have one set of turnout gear or allocated seated riding positions. This includes replacing out of service PPE and SCBA. If you are requesting SCBA or turnout gear that is damaged or unusable or unrepairable, I guess, but still in service, you will want to use the second high priority answer, which is replace in service, in use, damaged, unsafe, unrepairable PPE or SCBA to meet current standards. And if you're just simply just replacing your SCBA or turnout gear to meet the current standards, you will want to use the final high priority answer, which is to place in service, in use, expired. I'm sure we know by now, do not choose this. It's a low priority reason. If you choose this reason, your application will be dead and not proceed to the next stage. All right, so now you have your modifications to facilities. It is a high priority item. You got your direct source capture exhaust systems, sprinkler systems, or smoke and fire alarm systems that can be retrofitted into your station. All right. The highest priority will be given to applicants requesting a first time installation of a source capture exhaust system. All right. And super important, in order for you to request it to be the highest priority, the station being impacted must have sleeping quarters and be occupied 24/7. Training. One of the favorite things in the FEMA world is training. If you know anything about FEMA, FEMA loves its training. Training is expensive and tough to coordinate, but we will pay for it. All right. So again, take a look at the no phone, see if there's anything in there that you want to send your staff to, right? If you want to send your staff to firefighter one, firefighter two, BFO, HEMFRO, fire officer, FAST, BLS, ALS, EVOC, FEMA will pay for it. All right. And it's just important to note, in order for your training to be a high priority item or high priority, it must be led by an instructor that is certified to provide that training. I talked about it earlier. Um, Another item to consider is a micro grant. It's a pretty neat option, right? And it's actually really popular. Micro grants are an option on your option safety application itself. A micro grant is a request that is less than $75,000 and can be for any one of the 5 listed activities I mentioned earlier. All right, and so just a note, micro grants are an option. If you apply for a micro grant under any of these activities, right, your equipment, PPE, training, wellness and fitness, and modifications to facilities, then that micro grant becomes your ops and safety application. All right, I'm gonna give you an example. You cannot apply for a micro grant PPE washer and dryer that is less than $75,000 and do a second application to request SCBAs. You can only choose one. Micro grants are intended to help applicants that have not been successful in the past. For each micro grant application, the system will look back, I think over the past 5 years to determine if the applicant has been successful or not. If not, the applicant you may receive up to 3 additional points towards their pre-score, depending on how many times they have applied and not received an award. Um, it's also good to know that micro grants only compete with other micro grants, so it's not going to compete with any other ops and safety application. All right, so now I'm going to go into vehicle acquisitions, right? And for vehicles, like a lot of people are interested in vehicles, right? I know I would be if I could get it for free through AFG. Why not? Why not apply? Well, that's just the issue, right? There are so many departments that are interested in AFG uh, for vehicles, but AFG gives out so few each year, which makes it really super competitive. I think the turnout rate for FY23 was between 80 and 85%, which is super high. Vehicle acquisition is a high priority item and it's meant to replace unsafe vehicles. If the vehicle you're trying to replace has an open cab or a jump seat, it's about at least 25 years old or unsafe, you've got a good chance. If the vehicle is 15 years old, sorry, good luck. The vehicle program is super competitive, and the turn down rate is very high, but it doesn't hurt to apply. So you can submit an opposite safety application, you can submit a regional application, and you can submit a vehicle application to see how it goes. And the final application is the regional request. So I mentioned earlier, regional applications, you get together with your mutual aid partners. And again, mutual aid is a big sticking point for FEMA. Regional grants are attracted to us because it allows us to serve more communities, more firefighters, and more fire departments, right? A regional request is a good opportunity where you can combine the application with one or more other agencies to request a common need, right? So you get together with the surrounding departments and you can brainstorm, network, figure out what is your mutual interest, and figure out what is the common item that you need. For example, if you have a common item or common need for radios, and if your radios are out of date and you want to get new radios, you can go in a regional application with your mutual aid partners and apply. All right, so two more departments can also apply to request to replace an apparatus or get a new one. However, it has to benefit all departments involved, right? And just because you submitted a regional request doesn't mean you can't submit an opposite safety app request. I said it in the last slide, I'll say it now. You can submit both, and you can submit all three actually. Um, the catch is you can't submit the same thing. So you can't submit a regional request, for example, like say portable radios, but you can't submit an opposite safety application for the same exact thing. You have to choose a different high priority item. All right, so now we're going to discuss the narratives. Um, Now that we've discussed the application types, let's talk about developing your narratives, how to make it stand out, how to make it appear the most attractive, the most compelling, and the most eye-catching to the peer review panelist. All right, so in the next 2 or 3 slides, we're going to talk about the narratives. All right, so you listened to my advice and read the NOFO. You asked for high priority items, and you chose the high priority answers, and you made it through the computer preview score stage. Now you're at the peer review panel stage. So, and now you're going to have to type up your narratives. There are 5 narrative boxes, and I'm going to talk about each one separately. But before we start typing out the narratives, I want to give you some general advice and tips. And this can also be applied to other FEMA grants as well. All right, so the advice on this slide, right, applies to all the narrative boxes. We want you to write your narrative that is tailored to your department and your community. We don't want to know what another department is doing. We don't know what another county is doing. We want to know what your department and your community is doing. We want to know, excuse me, we want to know what is unique to you and the people that you serve. So really focus on yourselves. For example, if you're asking for a thermal imaging camera, you want to discuss why you need it and how you use it in your department operations to support your department, as opposed to what that thermal imaging camera is done, how it operates nationwide. When you develop your narrative, you want to ask a friend, or even better, right? Ask another first responder to proofread the final product. When I say proofread, I don't mean look at the punctuation, the grammar, and that's important to know as well. But what I mean proofread is I want it to make sense with another first responder because that's who your audience is. That the peer review panel is made up of other first responders. So you want to talk shop or talk the same language as a first responder, right? Um, Stay away from using brand names. For some reason, FEMA does not like using brand names. So try to stick with the type of equipment, not the manufacturer that makes it. And finally, that red H, you see the red H, that high priority item, make sure you always stick with the high priority items throughout the entire narratives. All right, so here are the 5 boxes that fire narratives you're gonna have to write. 4 sections of the narratives will be scored and one is not scored, right? But don't be fooled. The very first narrative, the community and agent description, even though this is not scored, this is the most important narrative. All right, you're essentially giving a description of your community and the description of your agency, and this is all about you. This is about this the first narrative box that the peer review panelist sees. They're gonna learn everything about you, who you are, the community you serve. They're gonna learn everything to know about what makes you unique, and this is why it is the most important box. You want to be able to captivate your audience. You want to capture their attention right off the bat. You want them to care about the remaining 4 narratives. If you do not capture their attention here, chances are they may lose interest for the remaining narratives. All right. So think of it like this. Think of it as watching season 1, episode 1 of a TV show or TV series that you want to get into, right? You want to get into Game of Thrones or House of Dragons or Sons of Anarchy. You want to be hooked on the first episode. Otherwise, it's off to the next show. That's it. I don't really care about it. Um, what's the next season? Well, I'm sorry, what's the next show? What does the next show have to offer? So think of it like that, right? You want them to care about this slide, or I'm sorry, care about this narrative to care about the rest of the narratives. So that first show is going to make or break you watching the rest of the season, right? So this narrative is going to make or break the peer review panels from reviewing the next narratives. The community and agency description will convince the peer review panel reader to have an interest for the next narrative. And the next narrative is the project description and budget. Uh, do you remember earlier where I mentioned the risk assessment? And so this is where, in this narrative, this is where this risk assessment will need to be put in. So this is where you're going to jot down that risk assessment. And this is going to score you points. All right. You do not need to get creative with the project description. So if you have a pen and paper, or you could pause it, I guess. There are 4 steps I want you to follow. All right. So step 1, identify your problem. Step 2, what is your solution to that problem? And step 3, how much will it cost? Step 4, sorry, and step 4, how long will it take to complete the project? All right. And this is where you want to jot down that risk assessment. Um, so the project description should sound something like this, right? We did a risk assessment and we found the following problems. These items are super old and do not work anymore. The solution to that problem is to use AFG funding to purchase this piece of equipment, and that this equipment will better help protect our firefighters and our community. It will cost this amount of money and it will get done. It will get done within 2 years of the peer performance. That's it. It's simple, step-by-step instructions right there. So your financial need narrative. So this is where you're going to convince the panelists that there is no way that you can complete this project on your own without asking for federal funds. And I'm sorry to say it, guys, if you're gonna have to seem like you're desperate for federal funds, even if you don't want to. Also, we're gonna want to see the efforts you made to make money, whether it's through fundraising, bake sales, you're going door to door asking for donations. Did you write a letter to Representative Tenney asking for her support on this? What efforts did you do to try to complete this project on your own? That is what we want to know. And this is super important. Make sure you put together a breakdown of your internal department's budget, how much money you have going in, and how much money you have going out. Oh, I'm sorry. All right. If you have any capital projects eating away at your budget, we want to know about it. If you have a 30-year-old engine that keeps breaking down and you need to keep pumping money to get it repaired, that's something you want to put down. You got to say what you're spending your budget money on, and this is why you can't afford to complete this project by yourself. Cost benefit. So this is your opportunity to show the benefits of the project as it relates to the cost. You want to know how far you can stretch that dollar. So this is where you want to talk about how that small amount of money that FEMA is going to give me is going to help this many people in our community, and how we're going to help, we're going to keep this many firefighters safe. You want to show how far you can stretch that dollar. And this is where you want to include any mutual aid benefits. If you give us this equipment, we're going to be able to help out 5 other communities in our neighboring jurisdictions that we provide mutual aid to. Not only is our community and our firefighters going to benefit, we're going to be able to help this other community, which has a huge population in addition to ours. And the last narrative is the statement of effect. Essentially, this is just a conclusion. You're going to take the main points from the first 4 boxes, the first 4 narratives, you're going to compile them into a summary, and you're going to talk about how this AFG award will help your community and your firefighters. As just like the cost benefit narrative, the statement effect narrative is very project driven. However, in this section, you'll want to show the benefits of the project as it relates to your daily operations. You want to describe how the project will improve operations or make your department more viable and effective. You want to discuss any reductions in risk to firefighters or the public safety. You want to thoroughly explain how often the equipment will be used when you do receive it. You want to talk about the impacts that the project may have on firefighters or the public safety or property conservation. All right. Again, it's just a summation of the first 4 narratives. All right, so you're at the home stretch. You complete the purpose questions, you complete the narratives, and you're ready to hit the submit button. But before you do, I strongly recommend you take a look at these documents and resources that FEMA provides. It's also located on the AFG website. You can go on Google, just type in FEMA AFG, and it will send you to a website. Or I'm going to send over the slides later on, and you can click on this link on the slide. And the AFG website will have all those documents I'm showing on the screen right now. So as you can see, I placed a star on the self-evaluation sheets. The reason why I have a star there is because those self-evaluation sheets will be brought up during the peer review panel stage. So when FEMA gives a little brief, a little pep talk to the peer review panelist on how to go about reviewing the narratives, FEMA is going to say, hey, take a look at these self-evaluation sheets. These are some things to look for when reviewing narratives. So again, it's like a cheat sheet for you guys. So please take a look at this sheets. Also download the narrative development document. It will give you more details on creating the narratives than what I talked about earlier. So there is a monthly AFG newsletter. If you have not signed up on it already, please do so. It would be a good idea to sign up on. It will give updates on when the application period opens, which I already talked about earlier, and when it closes, when you can expect to hear about your awards, and just some general AFG updates. All right, again, I'm always here to help out, so please email me, please call me, shoot me a text message, and if for some reason I can't get to you, you can contact that AFG program help desk you see on the screen. All right, so this concludes the development workshop. I'm going to open up the floor for questions and answers. Scroll back to the top.
Awesome. Thank you, Alvin. I appreciate it. That's a lot of information and a
Yeah.
lot of really good information. And thank you for popping the contact info up there. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to utilize the Q&A function down below. I don't see anything currently there, but I'll just give it about a minute or so just in case. And while
Also,
I'm waiting for that, oh, go ahead. Oh,
I'm sorry. Yeah, also, if anybody here has any inquiries or questions regarding their FY23, if they got rejected for the FY23 applications and they want to know why they got rejected, please, you could feel free to contact me. I'm always happy to help give any updates on what led to that rejection.
that's great. Thank you. That's incredible help.
Yeah.
So while I'm just gonna give it one more minute, just as some final housekeeping, again, this webinar was recorded, so it will be going up on the Congresswoman's official website, tenny.house.gov, at a later date. We'll also be posting it to her weekly newsletter and also be sending it out to any fire departments asking for it. Um, so as of this point in time, I don't see any questions in there. So I think it's probably safe to leave it at that. So with that being said, thank you again, Alvin. I appreciate all the help that FEMA is providing for this. And for any fire departments watching this, feel free to reach out to our office or please reach out to FEMA directly. We're happy to help with anything and everything.
It's my pleasure, and thank you, Michael, and thank you to Representative Tenney for setting this webinar up today.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much.
Take care.